Hello, Weehawken. Welcome to another edition of Weehawken High School's Kid Witness News. We have a great show for you today, so sit back and enjoy. We begin the show in March, and that means Women's History Month. This month we celebrate the major achievements of women across the globe. Our events reporter, Astrid Taffarello, tells us more about this important month.
Do you know what is celebrated all over the world on March 8th? It's International Women's Day. It is expanded in the U.S. to become Women's History Month, which begins on March 1st and ends on March 31st. Women's History Month is a celebration of women's achievements and contributions in history. It began as a week-long celebration in California in 1978. A few years later, other communities started celebrating it as well. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8th Women's History Week. 6 years later, the National Women's History Project successfully petitioned Congress to expand the event to the whole month of March. Don't forget to celebrate all the women in your life. This year was a big step for women because we have our first woman Vice President Kamala Harris. But let's not forget the women who came before her. Only 101 years ago, women were denied the right to vote. It took them 72 years of fighting to actually gain the right. Women weren't allowed to vote because it was threatening to the white men in power. So they started the women's suffrage movement. Suffrage meaning the right to vote. In 1848, there started to be conventions for women's suffrage. 20 years later, a women's suffrage amendment by Susan B. Anthony was proposed and rejected. In 1919, the same amendment by Susan B. Anthony was passed. On August 26, 1920, women were finally given the right to vote.
Thank you, Astrid. Very inspirational. Next, our social media reporter, Manazvi Miryala, is going to give us more insight about the increasing racism against Asian Americans. Very important report, Manazvi. Did you know that we now have a robot on planet Mars? Crazy, but it's true. And science reporter Gabriela Castaneda tells us more about NASA's most recent mission.
Hey students, parents, and faculty. On February 18th, 2021, a massive historical event occurred. The landing of Perseverance, the newest Mars rover, which successfully landed. With the cost of more than $2.4 billion, it was made possible. But this wasn't the first time. As of February 2021, there have been 5 successful robotically operated Mars rover. The first one being Sojourner, a Mars rover that launched on December 4th of the year 1996 and landed on July 4th, 1997. And it was active for 85 days. But it wasn't expected to last this long. Now next up, Spirit, the Mars rover that launched on June 10th, 2003 and landed on January 4th, 2004, with 6 years of activation. Taking over was a twin rover. They both were launched in similar times, but landed differently. Opportunity was the second of 2 rovers that launched in 2003 to land on Mars. Opportunity, the Mars rover, landed on January 25th of 2004, which lasted for nearly 15 years. The next one, which was the one before Perseverance, launched on November 26th of the year 2011 and landed on August 6, 2012, which lasted 14 years. Now, the Perseverance rover took its first test drive on the surface of Mars this week, which traveled some 21 feet of terrain in a short trip, which was a huge milestone for NASA scientists. Now, NASA said the rover ventured out from its landing site on Thursday, which was exactly 2 weeks after it first touched Mars. The drive lasted about 33 minutes, which was a test to see how was the rover's mobility. Now, apparently the rover moved forward 13 feet, turned to the left, and then backed up 8 feet until its new parking space. And it was able to capture photos of its touchdown, where it landed, and the wheel tracks that it left behind while it was moving. Scientists memorized the spot where Perseverance landed by unofficially naming it after Octavia Butler, who was a science fiction writer who died in 2006. The manufacturer of Perseverance was Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is a funded research and development center and a NASA field center in the city of LA. Its primary function is the construction of planetary robotic spacecraft. It's also responsible for operating NASA's Deep Space Network. According to NASA, 3 cameras were on the best of the section capsule, confronting upward. 1 stopped working, it fizzled, but 2 captured the parachute shooting upward at almost 100 miles per hour. And after that, it surged open to a moderate shuttle that was speeding towards the ground at 1,000 miles per hour. What is the purpose of a Mars rover? What are the purpose of rovers in general that NASA uses? Well, according to NASA, it determines the distribution of minerals and soils that surround the landing site. Now, the videos that you guys have been watching in the background are all credits to NASA, and the first few videos that are shown are the launching of the Mars rover, and right now it's an animation by NASA of the landing of Perseverance on Mars. Now, this video is a 360 of Perseverance on Mars and its surroundings.
Wow, Gabriella, that's really cool. Next up, our pandemic reporter, Olivia Fanders, begins her Working During the Pandemic series. She starts by interviewing an industry professional, Brandy Clark Lennon, who as the director of the hot television show, The Tamron Hall Show, reflects on how she and those in her industry were able to adapt and thrive during the pandemic. Check it out.
Hello viewers, and welcome to episode 1 of Working During the Pandemic. Today I'm going to be interviewing Brandy Clark Lennon, the director of The Tamron Hall Show. So at the beginning of the pandemic, the show was being taped from Tamron Hall's home. How did you do your job while this was going on?
Well, it was very interesting. We had to kind of figure it out as we went. So when we first started, we were doing everything like this through Zoom. So what would happen was I would get into the Zoom room that Tamron would be interviewing somebody on, and I'd make sure Tamron's shot looked okay and the guest shot looked okay, and I'd speak them through that. And then we'd record it like you're doing right now. And then we'd go into edit. And so we were very heavily reliant on our editors. And then I would screen everything the editors did and give my notes if it didn't follow something I might have done if I was directing a live show. And then as we moved on and it became apparent we were staying home in that mode, we had a sub control room in the city, a company that is called LiveX. And basically all of our feeds would go into them. And I got a link on my computer. So I had like almost like a control room layout on my computer. And then my phone was like a McCurdy system, or like, you know, a way for us all to talk to each other. So I could talk to Tamron from my phone. I could talk to the guests from my phone. I could talk to the executive producer who was in her home from my phone. So it was kind of really interesting because I was like, at that point, then I was really directing because I was calling what shots I wanted taken from my house. And there was a technical director at the company who would punch up what I wanted to do. So that was really interesting and different. We still, you know, we couldn't do everything we normally could do, obviously. And the hardest part was like, you have very little control because everything is happening. You know, Tamron had to do everything herself. She had to put her own mic on and she had to do her own hair and makeup. And if we had a prop, she had to make sure she had the prop, you know? And so it just was all sorts of challenges that nobody ever anticipated, but it made me appreciate my crew a lot because we were trying to do so much without them and it was not easy.
Wow. So what are some challenges that you faced after you began taping in the studio again?
So we came back to the studio in September, and the first thing we had to do was look at the set because we knew we weren't going to have an audience or most likely in-person guests. So we had a set designer come in and we said, like, we need to establish some way that she can interview all these people who aren't going to be actually physically there, but without doing like typical double boxes all the time or something like that. Like we want to make it almost feel like this person is closer to Tamron than they are. So we did a whole set refresh and we wound up putting a monitor up that we could put our guests in that she could look at and speak to. And it's better for her too, because she sees the person larger, you know, and can react to what they're saying and facial expressions and stuff like that. So that was the first challenge, was figuring out how we were going to shoot this. The next challenge was that we had to really minimize how many people could come in because we had to socially distance and try to just minimize the amount of people we were putting at risk, really. So I had to figure out what was essential for our show. And then we picked those people. And then it's just all of the interesting things we've all been going through of figuring out how to make things work in a totally new environment where we're social distancing and wearing PPE and all these things that nobody ever knew we would have to do, you know?
Wow, that is really interesting. So when I was in the booth last year, it was really crowded. And obviously this can't happen because of COVID-19. So what are some of the changes that have been made to accommodate social distancing inside the booth?
So inside the booth, again, it's less people. So the front row is just my technical director, myself, and my AD. And what happened was my AD moved 2 seats away. So he's 6 feet away from me, and my technical director and I are basically 6 feet away anyway because of the board, how large it is. So we all stay put. We don't really move from our seats. And then the back row, there's actually glass that we close so that we're separate from them. And they limited how many people came in. So there's only 3 of them back there spread out. And then in the way back is our graphics operator. And so we've just minimized the amount of people and the movement. Like that's the hard thing is I'm so used to being able to jump up and run to the floor and do things. And I have to really only go somewhere when it's essential and try to, even my meeting, I used to go to the floor for my camera meeting, and now I do it from the control room over headset, just so I don't have face-to-face time with more people than I should.
Okay, so what are some of the other precautions that have been taken because of COVID-19?
So we all wear masks all day, every day. I direct with a mask on. The studio floor, people who work on the studio floor have to wear a mask and a face shield and gloves. Because if they touch anything that Tamron's going to touch, they have to have the gloves on. Everyone tries to stay 6 feet apart, like unless they absolutely can't. But it actually has worked pretty well because we have only 3 well, now I'm down to 2 cameras and robos. So like they can stay apart, you know, and the stage manager just stays away from them. We only have 1 stage manager because it's just Tamron really on set. And then when we come in the morning, we get our temperatures taken and they ask us to do a health assessment before we come in, just to make sure you're not feeling any symptoms or anything. And she double checks that, the COVID officer. So we have a COVID officer on site, safety officer also. And she walks around and she looks for things like people wearing their masks improperly or people too close together and that kind of stuff. And then everybody on the show gets tested. So if you're on the studio floor, you get tested twice a week. And then if you're not, you get tested once a week. So I've been getting tested twice a week since September. So it's crazy, but it's nice peace of mind. And in the cases when somebody has gotten sick, you know, quickly, and then they contact trace. And so you feel a little safer because you know that anyone that was in contact with them is not coming into work anymore. So
and do you see any of those precautions being taken after the pandemic?
I keep wondering about that. Like I keep wondering about the distancing thing because I don't know how you feel like when I watch a television show, an old TV show or something, and people are close together, I get like a little uncomfortable, you know, because we've gotten so used to distancing from people. So I'm curious if maybe like some of the distancing will remain, and I'm very curious about how long we'll be in masks because my kids go to school and they wear masks at school and nobody's really even had a cold this year because everybody's in masks. So I'm like, is that something that's going to stick around to try to keep people healthy, you know, for a while? I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't think we'll ever fully go back to how things were before, which is weird because we eventually want to build to get back to having an audience and in-studio guests. So what does that look like? Do we have to spread the audience out? Do we, you know, I'm curious about all those things. But I feel like we're still developing. We're still figuring it out.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Of course. Thank you for asking.
Bye.
Bye, Olivia. Thank you.
The pandemic has not just affected people who have lost their jobs, but also those who still have theirs. Workers all over the world have had to make major changes to accommodate COVID-19 precautions. Let's just hope we won't need those precautions much longer. I hope to see you again next time. I'm Olivia Fanders, and this is Working During the Pandemic from KWN.
Very interesting report, Olivia. We can't wait to see the rest of the series. Now we go to Eliana Fanders, Weehawken High School beat reporter, to learn more about the Model UN Club.
Model UN is an extracurricular activity at Weehawken High School. 7th and 8th graders are allowed to participate. What we do is we basically join a simulated UN. Students pick what delegation they want to be. For example, this year, several students picked UNESCO and the World Health Organization. They serve as delegates. This year, we are Italy. So they are serving and representing Italy in these role-playing exercises as committees. So, for example, they may be coming up with the COVID policy for a region like the Middle East, or suggestions, and then all of a sudden, while they're working on this with other delegates, somebody announces, the chairperson announces, hey, there's an Ebola outbreak in Libya. What are we going to do? And then as the UN delegates, these students will have to come together and come up with solutions or policies as they're working in real time. Again, role-playing as delegates. Well, before virtual learning, the conferences were face to face and physical. So that means that one committee was in one room with a bunch of delegates, another committee was in another room, maybe in another building on the campus. The conference goes for 2 days, and again, you're rotating physically to these rooms and you're seeing what's going on. Well, with COVID-19 protocols, we're going to be all virtual. So the meetings will take place kind of how I'm talking to you now via Zoom or Google Meets. I don't know how they're going to do it. It's new to us. We don't know. But this kind of exchange is very conducive to, the obvious collaboration that the delegates will have with one another. So we're hopeful, but we'll see. It's a new thing for us too this year with the conference being virtual. Well, we technically didn't choose the country. It was given to us. But we have a 12-member delegation going this year to the conference. And when you have a 12-member delegation, you have a certain list of countries to choose from. Italy was a part of that list. It was one of our choices. We wanted to pick something. Actually, our president, Charlie Castillo, said that it would be a good idea for us to take a country that has had a lot of experience with COVID, considering that this is basically the theme of the current convention. So we went with Italy. It was sort of chosen for us, but we kind of made the choice too. So it was kind of 50-50.
Great job, Eliana, and well done, Model UN. Here's the latest on Weehawken High School sports from Aria and I. Take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Aria Music and I'm here to update you on the current sports season. The girls basketball team ended their season with a record of 7-8 with no COVID cases pausing it. Sydney Williams set a Weehawken girls basketball record of 7 3-pointers in a single game. Amazing work. The team also has 2 graduating seniors, Natalie Cancio and Zana Lofton. Congratulations on their 4 years.
The Weehawken boys basketball and bowling teams both had successful seasons. Congrats to basketball seniors JJ Santos, Andrew Ortiz, Favim Wells, Colin Shevlin, and Jose Marin. We can't wait to see what you're going to do in the future. The boys' top scorer ended up being sophomore Keanu Ray, who finished with 240 points. Nice job.
Varsity boys basketball, varsity girls basketball, and bowling all participated in the maximum number of games without any shutdowns. Girls swimming, volleyball, marching band, and wrestling have started with their practices and are getting ready for a very hard-working season.
Wow, I'm so excited for spring sports. Good luck to all. Astra Taffarello, for the second year in a row, is the winner of the Elks Drug Awareness Video Contest at the state level, and we get to have an exclusive look at her work. Check it out.
Hey look, Batty Matty. Any drugs? You can't allow that. Ha 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 ha. Stop! It's just druggy Matty.
Leave her alone,
Why should I?
because you don't know anything about her. Hi.
You're Charlotte, right?
You're Madison. Your name is in English right now, right?
So are you.
I don't know. Madison, why are you doing this?
Doing what?
Skipping class and doing drugs.
Well, why do you even care?
This is the first time you've ever talked to me. I know. My mom had a drug problem too. She didn't believe me when I said she could change. And it was too late. I just don't want that to happen to you.
There are many kids at this school that will bully me no matter what I say. Why should I trust you?
I just want to help.
Right? When do we
You
start?
need to get rid of the drugs. Where do you get them from?
I don't get them. Some other kids come every few weeks and give them to me.
Next time you'll be ready to say no.
It's not gonna be easy.
But first, you need to throw away what you have.
Do that. No thanks, I'm clean, I don't need it, and I don't want it.
But come on, once a drug kid, always a drug kid.
That's not what I am.
What are you doing?
And you shouldn't be either. Madison, I did it. I said no, and I threw those horrible things away, and thank you for everything.
I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, my friend. Always.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
I think it's time we go.
Super cool, Astrid. Great job. Now, on to Angelica's Best. This series features the best of the best. This time, Angelica looks at virtual museum tours and the coolest attractions you can visit, all from your own home.
Hey all. This year, things may be a little different, but in no means does it have to be boring. Come with me on an exciting adventure. This special, I will be talking to you about various online virtual tours of museums of your liking. Site 1. First up, the National Museum of Natural History. Visit naturalhistory.si.edu/visit/virtual-tour. Now that we've arrived at the website, let's take a look. So here on the National Museum of Natural History's website, we can find a series of tours from Museum Support Center and research stations to narrated tours under so many categories. According to the site, the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History virtual tours allow visitors to take self-guided room-by-room tours of select exhibits and areas within the museum from their desktop or mobile device. Visitors can also access select collections and research areas at our satellite support and research stations, as well as past exhibits that are no longer on display. So let's take a look. If you scroll down on the website, you can find all the tours that are still accessible. We have permanent exhibits, current exhibits, past exhibits, museum support and center and research stations, and a few other tours. And if you scroll down a bit more, we have some tour tips that tell you that you can get close-ups of everything in the tours, you can zoom in on images, and you can really look at the details of everything just like if you were to be inside of the museum. So let's take a look at the past exhibits. So once we click into the past exhibits, it brings us to this page, and we can click on any of these links, which will also bring us to a closer view of exactly what they are talking about. So here we've entered a specific exhibit where we can look around and we can zoom in and we can really take a look at everything inside. And I think it's just so cool. Next up, we have the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. To visit this website, just put this link into your browser and you'll be right there. Okay, so here we are at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Just kidding, it's a website. If you're like me and you love art, this is the tour for you. There are multiple exhibits ranging from paper, graphite, and watercolor painting to etching and cardboard art, plus specials such as the Fashioning a Nation and Vermeer and the Masters of Genre Painting, all on Google Arts and Culture. So let's take a closer look at this website. Scrolling down, we can find 2 stories and collections of different pieces of art, like I said earlier. And if you read up here, we can also see that there's an app for this site, so you can also download an app. But for now, let's just take a look at Fashioning a Nation. So when opening this up, you can take a closer look at fashion in the 1900s, 1800s, 19th century. and we can look at history behind that fashion and the artwork that represents it. So I think that's really awesome. I'm super excited for this site, especially because of Women's History Month. So let's take a look at the National Women's History Museum. Here we finally are on the National Women's History Museum. This is super exciting. We can cover so many topics such as standing up for change, the women of NASA, Harriet Tubman, women in the Olympics, and so much more. Let's take a closer look. So when scrolling down on the website, we can find all of the different choices of things that we can learn about. Today I'm going to be clicking specifically on women in the Olympics. So let's click on it and see what we can find. So when clicking on women in the Olympics, it will bring me down to a timeline. And when we click the arrows, we can learn about the first modern Olympic Games, women entering those games, the first games in America, and so much more. Here's a fun fact. Another sport that was considered acceptable for women to play was tennis. Helen Wills won gold medals in both the women's singles and doubles events in 1924. This was the last year tennis was played in the Olympics until 1988. So that's a super cool fact, and we can learn so many more on this website, womenshistory.org. And that's all for today, folks, on Angelica's Best. Oh, come on!
Well, that's all we have for now. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. For everyone on the Weehawken High School Kid Witness News team, I'm Sebastian Stratton. See you next time.